What is up, you guys? Thanks so much for clicking on this video. My name is Tara, and I don't know what to say for my introduction, honestly. I'm someone who used to be an IV drug user, and then I was a deeply devout, big book thumping 12-stepper, and now I am a person in long-term recovery who uses plant medicine, but also speaks out about the harm that takes place in hardcore, fundamentalist, extremist 12-step groups. So it's kind of a mouthful, but that's me. So per usual, I didn't prepare, but I was just thinking about trauma and trauma in general, and especially online, right? We always hear the word like trauma, trauma, trauma. If you are in recovery and you have been to a lot of rehabs or have been to a lot of counseling or programs, they might have, really talked about trauma and trying to find some, I know for me personally, when I started going to rehabs and everything, they would always try to have me find this significant event or something in my life that happened that made me an IV heroin user, right? They were always digging deep, and I really didn't feel like I had anything, I didn't have any significant childhood trauma that I thought would lead me to have a substance use disorder. And when you are in meetings and when you are in rehab and group therapy and everything, and you hear people's stories, a lot of people do have childhood trauma. And, I think it's important to remember that there's little t trauma and big T trauma, and even little t trauma can bring you to drugs. For me, obviously, I don't know 100% for sure, but after doing a lot of research and a lot of reflecting, what I think led me to drugs, and I already shared this with you guys before, but I have ADHD. I was diagnosed in 7th grade. I've always had trouble in school and just doing things and regulating my emotions and all of these things that even when I got a diagnosis in the late 90s, they didn't tell me or my parents any of that stuff. I got an IEP plan that gave me untimed testing and a script for, it was Dexedrine. It was these little, I remember they were orange pills, and they had these little orange beads in them, they were time release capsules or something. And I hated the medicine because it completely sucked out my entire personality. It just made me a zombie, and I hated it, and I barely took it. But what I know about ADHD makes so much sense, and I wish that I had known these things about it back then, because there were a bunch of qualities and characteristics about myself that just really led me to be what the hell is wrong with me? I feel like I spent so much of my life trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. Why do I act like this? Why do I have no control over this? Why, even when I want to do something, I can't get myself to do, I couldn't understand. I was I'm completely, totally effed up. And that's why when I first started smoking weed and drinking that 7th grade summer, before 8th grade, 7th grade summer going to 8th grade, and not only did it make me feel good, I was good at it, and I was finally, it was finally something that I was better at than any of my friends, and back then, I guess that's kind of a big deal, when you're a kid, that's cool, or it made me feel cool, because I had one best friend who was really good at basketball, one that was really good at volleyball, one that was really good in school. It was I had nothing. But then I took on the identity of being a stoner and a person who liked to drink and a party girl, and I was okay, this is my identity, and I fit the part quite fantastically. And that is what I had no clue back then, that it was going to lead me to, a needle in my arm. But that trauma, even though feels extremely insignificant to what other people have gone through in their childhood, it was enough for me to form a powerful relationship with drugs and alcohol. And I just wanted to share that because I know that I can't be the only person who, like, I don't feel so bad anymore now that I know this about myself, but when didn't understand this, and I would hear people's just like horrifying traumatic backgrounds, and it was like, then you hear that saying like, trauma is the gateway to addiction, and you're like, well, then I am just like completely like just defective because I don't have the childhood trauma that I'm hearing everybody else have. Like, and looking back at it, another reason I think that I was so attracted to like the big book and the 12 steps is because in the big book it says, alcoholics drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And then they talk about how we have this allergy and all this stuff. So it was like, oh, like it has nothing to do with trauma. It just has to do with I am a addict and alcoholic and I have an allergy. So that's why I am the way that I am. Like, it was years and years before I processed that my struggling in school and ADHD was enough. That was enough to propel me into the use of drugs and alcohol, whether it was doomed from the start or whether it just ended up that I developed a problem. I'm not sure, but it was enough to get me going. And I was done. Like, once I accepted that, then I was done with that struggle of what is wrong with me? Why does everybody else have all these traumatic things? And, I still became an IV drug user living in my car, even without the trauma. So if trauma is the gateway to addiction, do I just have like a broken brain? Like, why did I get there? And then, like, you learn about little t trauma and big T trauma, and little t trauma is enough to get you going, bro. So, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna go. But I hope you guys have a fabulous day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.